Okay, thank you everyone for coming. This is the first in a series called Past the Orcs, where we are going to bring together legends of Hong Kong nightlife and also have the young guard, the new crop of talent, put them all in a room, put them on stage, and just kind of see what we've got going on. And as I sort of look out at this room and see all these faces, it's like 3:45, but it's 4:45 in the afternoon, not in the morning. So my sort of brain doesn't really compute because, this is a kind of a collection of reprobates, which I don't expect to see in daylight hours, basically.
Speak for yourself, mate.
Well, your party's always going on into the afternoon, so actually, that's where you're right.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, we have. Who don't know this gentleman right here in the center? I'll try and summarize in as succinct form as possible. I think nightlife legend, impresario, all kind of fits in here. Andrew Bull, aka DJ El Toro.
Thank you very much. A pleasure to be invited.
He basically wrote the rule book for pretty much all of us who've ever done anything in nightlife here. He came to Hong Kong in the 70s, pretty soon had his radio show, and from there kind of parlayed into a remarkable career, which we're going to talk about tonight, and just go through all the milestones of Andrew's career, but also look at what happened in Hong Kong at the time. And a lot of you guys were there at the time, so you're gonna have your own personal stories and stuff. And of course, we have Arthur, the handsome Arthur Bray, right there. From YETI. Arthur graced our March issue cover last year, looking super cool.
That's my tombstone, by the way.
with Tedman as well. And when Arthur and I met, when this issue came out, we started talking. We were going to do a little gathering at TATLER House, and it was going to be like, let's do, I don't know, what should we do? Do we party or what do we do? We've got to celebrate this, right? Actually, after our discussion, we realized Arthur is one of the few legit guys who actually cares about the musical history and clubbing history of Hong Kong. And it's kind of nice to see how the young guard is like looking at it. And if you look at anything YETI does, and YETI is doing a lot, but like you always throw in a real Hong Kong flavor to everything. You've got your Canto Pop stars, you're doing your gold chains, but at the same time you're doing collabs with Nike. So you're blowing up, you're global, but you still have a real Hong Kong flavor. So we're very happy to have Arthur here as well in conversation. And the kind of the format today is going to be we're going to be looking at photos. The photos are going to trigger the conversations, and we're going to talk for about 45 minutes, something like that, and then we're going to throw it out to you guys. We're going to have questions from you guys. I'm sure you're going to have a ton of questions or comments or memories or whatever it is. By the way, guys, I just read a BBC report that said nostalgia is good for you. It's actually scientifically proven to be a benefit for mental health, and it promotes positivity. So hopefully we're all going to be feeling pretty warm and fuzzy by the end of the hour or so. Okay. Last but not least, I want to say some thank yous, and especially to the man in the hat out at the back who's just walked in, Alan Fung. This is his studio.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
He's right over there. Alan, thank you very much for the studio today. Also this fantastic space here, which is Alan and Janet's, designed by the fantastic Jackie Fung right there as well. So a lot of you asking me about this space and the beauty of the design, and that's all Jackie. We're also really honored here to have Dom Perignon come on board and give us as much champagne as we want. And if at any point today the Star Wars theme plays and a bottle of Dom Perignon comes in on sparklers, it's because Gilbert Yeung is here. So just so you know, it can happen at any point. And
Wonder Fruit's sponsoring the after party, and so is Min. So we all get in trouble.
And of course, there's caviar and quite a lot of it, and that's from our friend Mr. Jason Cohen right over there. Jason, as you probably know, is now in the caviar biz. He's the caviar dealer, so he can sort you out with a few kilos of caviar. And it's called Nomad. It's a great brand, and yes, you're probably thinking, is it from Nomad Land? But it's not. So Jason can actually tell you where it's from if you talk to him afterwards and have a chat with him. Okay, so that's the intro. Let's get it on, guys. So if you put your eyes on the screen for a second, you're going to see some images of the young Andrew Bull here, going back to the day.
The early days.
I guess, just to kick everything off, like before we even delve into like sort of the start of it, what's the story behind El Toro though? Like, I want to know what's the meaning behind that name?
I get that from a surprising number of people. All you have to do is think what my name is in English and think, well, what would that be in Spanish?
Right.
And do you get it now?
Yeah, maybe after a few more glasses.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, but it's basically my name in Spanish.
Okay. So
Full marks.
yeah.
I'm glad we cleared that up.
Clear that up. So we got.
I've known you pretty much my whole life, but I didn't know that.
I'm telling you, I get this all the time. Douglas doesn't believe it, but it's true. A lot of people can't connect that. So I'm like, I'm quite patient about explaining it. I was less so when I first started. But anyway.
So four photographs on the monitor right now. Perhaps you can run us through, like, maybe the one with you by the car first, because we want to get to the DJing one last.
Well, that's a series of publicity photos that were taken in the Radio Hong Kong car park. That was before it was RTHK, it was RHK, when Uncle Ray had just given me a heavy rock, progressive rock, 45 minutes a week, playing rock music called Hardcore in 1973. And there was an old car which somebody from the 50s had been a DJ there but died leaving the car in the car park, and it was an Armstrong Siddeley, a classic car, and so I just decided to have my picture taken next to the old rot. It was all, the tires were flat and it hadn't been cleaned since the 50s, but they didn't move it away until about 1975. So that was that picture taken, and I still have that bow tie, belongs to my father. The picture in the bottom, that was the earliest known picture of me using a turntable. That was in the record library at British Forces Broadcasting Service Studio in Cologne in Germany. And my father was there doing a show, and I was in the record library checking out some tracks.
And do you remember the record you were holding there?
No, I honestly cannot, but it was, I went up, because my father was, he was a priest in the army, and he used to do like 5 minutes of, positive thoughts for the day or quotes from the Bible from 6:55 to 7 a.m. On the army radio station. They also used to do it in Radio Hong Kong. So when I was a kid, I used to tag a lot. That's how I started having access to music.
If I'm not mistaken, it's an early Chicago album.
It certainly is, yeah. I'm not sure if I would have played it in the show, because it was a bit that was a bit too commercial. I was playing a lot more undergroundy stuff, but anyway, I must have just grabbed that album.
Probably the Latin version.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, possible. Yeah.
U.S. club mix.
And the middle picture is me when I was about 11 or something. So who knows? That's
okay.
That's
so
how we are.
I think pretty soon after arriving into Hong Kong, you had your radio show, and you found yourself part of literally the scene.
Yes.
So here we are. This is a TATLER article documenting the early clubs of Hong Kong. So maybe you could talk a little bit about this.
Well, I mean, the scene disco, which at the time was the only club in Hong Kong playing vinyl records, because in the 60s they had a bit of a disco revolution, like Swinging London. There was a lot of clubs in Kowloon, the Purple Onion, the Bayside, and this, you can see Beth Smith, who's now Beth Narain, DJing in there in the 60s. But they changed to a live band club in the early 70s. A guy called Ashton Farley, who was a famous radio DJ on Radio Hong Kong, had got the gig back for DJs and kicked the bands out. So I took over from him a little bit later on, 74, 73, 74, something like that. And
who are the females in the photo?
oh, that's June Newt, and Paulona Chai, the girl sitting next to me, she was a famous model and choreographer, married to Tony Kung, the guy who's immediately behind me, who's the guy who he had a company in Central Building called the Audio Supplies Company. They're still there. They're the agent for Brown shavers, electric. But he also had a hi-fi division, and I told him there was a brand called Sherwin Vega, which he should get. It was like the bespoke disco equipment brand. So he wrote off or sent a telex to America to something called Sherwin Vega, and he became the Sherwin Vega agent. So I made him a lot of money because Sherwin Vega was in every club in Hong Kong, bar none, in the 70s. That was the brand you would go to.
So, I mean, before we move to the next slide, just sort of encapsulate like the vibe of the energy in the room. Like, what was it like then compared to, I mean, obviously, things change, you know, sound systems switch up, technology improves, but like, could you just sort of describe the energy of 1977, the scene?
Well, I mean, the mix of people was incredible because in those days, Hong Kong was deeply connected to the garment district in New York. So the Peninsula Hotel, the Sheraton, and to a later extent, the Regent, it was like an extension of the New York garment district because there was no made in China in those days. Everything was made in Hong Kong, which meant made in Kwun Tong. So the airport was in Kai Tak. It was an easy ride into Tsim Sha Tsui. So all of the garmentos were Kai Tak Airport, Peninsula Hotel, Kwun Tong. So watching their production. So at any one time, some of the hippest people in New York were in the building. So there'd be Kenzo. Kenzo was there every night. You know, people like Nancy Kwan would bring a group of people in. You know, so there was like and so the mix of people was incredible. We had all the New York fashionistas, all of the gay people, newly liberated. It was before AIDS. It was an unbelievably open vibe. But at the same time, the Vietnam War had not ended, and there was a certain type of girl that used to hang out with the African American sailors. So I would give them drinks tickets and they would go to the Blake Pier and wait for the black guys to come off the ship and bring them down. So we had this whole funk vibe going and we had this fashionista vibe going. And then there was all of the cooler people in Hong Kong. Cathay Pacific had really cool hostesses and things like that in those days. So the mix was incredible.
That's right, man.
And of course, you had Sir Michael there holding court with his wonderful ruffled shirt.
Yeah, that was in the 60s. That's when it was swinging 60s. And also in that picture there is Eddie Lau, who's a very famous Hong Kong fashion designer. Adi. Adi. Yeah. He looks exactly like that now, if you go to his Facebook page.
And Alan Lee as well, the Didier's dad. Right there.
Yeah. So
and Albert Yeung boogieing away in the
there's
corner shot.
Yeah, there's that famous shot. Yeah, that was at the Taipan Club, which is here. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's look at the Taipan Club. So here's more pictures from it.
Because the scene, which was in the last frame, that closed down in 1977. In 1978, a guy called Tony Law opened something in the Miramar Hotel, which is now the Hotel Mira. And he brought me over to set up the DJ, because he had a live band there when he started as well. So he asked me to turn it into disco. It was right just before Saturday Night Fever came out. And it was a respectable place to go, as you can see. Well-dressed people, upscale, and...
IMAX Zero?
Hey?
Sorry, no. So what was the technical setup there then? Like,
well, that's a Sherwin Vega mixer,
okay,
which we bought from Tony. And those are Technics 1500 turntables with the digital control, which I still kind of prefer, because you remember, this one is -3 to bring it down to mix with that. So it's actually I still prefer the digital readout. And I was using a sound sweep there. That's the mixer, a sound sweep, and the equalizer. The equalizer self-explanatory, but the sound sweep was a device which sent the sound round a quadraphonic sound system, a bit like if you had a Pioneer mixer now, you'd have a sort of flanger or a phaser type effect. You'd do it in an analog way.
Rotary mixer.
Yeah, it's sort of sending the sound around the speakers. Not very actually not very good.
So this was in
You don't
Chipside
want to
Show.
go there, trust me, because the sound just goes boom, 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 and everyone thinks there's something wrong.
That's mad. DJ booth looks a bit like a spaceship though. It's quite a unique setup. Like I don't get right now. You don't sort of get situations like that where it's literally sort of like.
Well, there was nowhere to rate.
El Toro, mate.
Well, there was no way to raise it up so you're looking down on the audience because it was a live band club and they had this corner where there was like a mixer or something, and I had to convert that into a DJ booth on the fly. So it's not ideal. But I like to be near the people. I wouldn't want to be in the bar at the back or miles away.
What sort of music?
That was the 12-inch single had come alive. It was things like Let's All Chant, all that kind of disco. Saturday Night Fever had just started to come out.
So Chimsai Chow was a hotspot. This is like
Hong Kong side really didn't come to life until the MTR opened.
Right.
I mean, the MTR was what saved Hong Kong side.
The music we were playing before the George Lamb track was your mix, and that mix was recorded on that system. That's what you were saying, the TAC, right?
Yeah, I used to take that with me, because it gave quite good. Because I used to sell TDK C90 for 100. I could make 500 or 600 a night. On the from rich garmentos in the hotel, there's I got this tape, and they would bring my tapes back to New York to boast that the guy in Hong Kong was better than the guy in Studio 54, which was quite a common boast in those days.
Well, it's more than a boast. It's actually a news report.
Yeah.
So there you have it. That's the actual news report of the Hong Kong scene. And as you can see right there, the highlighted passage there says, is much better than Studio 54.
Yeah. So this was a party for Bobby To, who was Hong Kong's Karl Lagerfeld, who's almost forgotten, but he was the most incredibly flamboyant guy. That's him on the top left, dressed as Tutankhamun, and he put himself on a pedestal on the middle of the dance floor, and he invited people from all over the world, but he stood on the pedestal for the entire party, not even saying hello to anyone. And then when people had left, he got off and undressed.
Was that wasn't a Tatler though, was it?
No, this was some Women's Wear Daily. They have this was specifically. That's why they have Farrah Fawcett advertising zips.
Cheeky editor though, right? Between the lines. What was he thinking? Like?
But that's Peter and Betty Lewis. That's the photo right there, Jason. Those two there, and the quote. I'm quite proud of this press clipping because they quote some famous fashion buyer as saying that the DJ was superb and the sound system was better than Studio 54. So that was quite an accolade for little old Hong Kong in 1978.
Amazing, and that's actually Kenzo there. If you look at the photo on the bottom right.
Yeah, that's Kenzo. Yeah, he was following me around for a long time, and then that party also had Nancy Kwan with a big group of people, and Dragon Eye would be hosting a party like that these days, but that was the party to be at in '78.
That's mad.
All right, what's next? Disco.
Yeah.
Now it begins to really start cooking in Hong Kong.
Well, Gordon, I first met at the scene because he was like a sort of LGBT sort of suffragette, because they had a manager at the scene whose job it was to make sure men didn't dance together. So he would deliberately go to the scene and dance with his boyfriend so that he could get thrown out as a protest. So he was agitating in that way. That was his thing. Then he found this location on D'Aguilar Street, and it was right just as the MTR was getting built. So he called me and said, I'm going to do this Studio 54 of Hong Kong. You're going to come over. And I didn't really believe it because nobody believed in Hong Kong side, and there was certainly no Lang Kwai Fong. So I just said, well, I'll train some DJs for you and I'll keep an eye on whether you can make it or not. But from day one, this guy was Steve Rubel and Ian Schrager all rolled into one of Hong Kong. He was definitely, it was a privilege to have him as my boss when I did. But yeah, there's the 1500s that we used at Disco Disco. We never changed to 1200s.
How big was the club?
Well, it's the site where Volar was. So if you've been to Volar, but I never actually went to Volar, but it was that basement on Dagenham Street. We had a huge dance floor, and it was very well designed. And I put the DJ booth. I was there when I did eventually move there. He insisted that I design my own DJ booth, so I designed that. And I always had it raised up, and there's always a mirror in front, so you can always guarantee there'll be 10 girls in front of the DJ booth. You know, if you've got a mirror in front of the DJ booth, there'll always be 10 girls dancing in front of you. So that's pro tip.
How did the club scene go from Tsim Sha Tsui to Central though? Like, what was this?
Well, I mean, as I say, because Hong Kong side was like a sleeping giant, because it was. After 11 o'clock at night, you could only get to Hong Kong side by Walla Walla, one of those little boats, which your generation probably doesn't know what it is. But it was a little boat next to the Star Ferry. When the Star Ferry closed, you had to get one of these boats. So it was completely nonsense to try to get there. And taxis, like taxis don't want to go to Kowloon or Hong Kong side, even now. You should have tried it in 1972. So, because so nobody seriously wanted to try to do that. Right. And so the tunnel had opened in 72, but the MTR, I think, it took until 76 or even later, 78 maybe. So Gordon hit the zeitgeist there because young Chinese people from Kowloon or Causeway Bay or somewhere could get there. I don't know if it was 24 hours, but basically the advent of the MTR brought Hong Kong side into realistic life.
What was sort of like the curfew back then compared to now? Has it always been like completely nocturnal, like in terms of the clubs? And this is 1979.
It wasn't as late. I mean, I think we closed by 3.
Really?
Even on weekends.
Yeah.
It was not like, you get out there in the daylight. It was not that culture.
And was there always like, I think people are so ADD now that they go to like 12 clubs a night. But like back then, what was the pre-game before like Disco Disco? Was there like...
Well, I mean, there was a few restaurants in that area which catered to... There was like a famous gay place called the Crossroads Bar. And there was... Cat Street. Yeah, people used to go to the Hilton Hotel coffee shop, Cat Street, and they would sort of gather there. You could see little groups. No, that was for a different class of person. But
shots fired.
And it was in Kowloon. But yeah, no, it was. It was very much a home base for people. I mean, there was like lots of different tribes. There was like the sort of LGBT female element, short hair, black suits. There's a big gang of that going on, and there's a very flamboyant sort of the Richard De Silva, the sort of drag queen element was quite strong in those days. There was Chris Marling, Richard De Silva, constantly doing
blow
shows, drag shows. It was a great mix of people as well.
I'll have you know that Bottoms, that was good enough for 007.
It was. I'm sure it was. Yeah. But no, it was another era compared to us.
So you're meant to finish the club night at 3 a.m. and then get a ferry back to Kowloon side. Like, what would you normally do? Like, there's no Choi Wah, like.
No. There was not much in Central. I don't think there was a Choi Wah. We used to go to somewhere in Happy Valley, Lee Gardens. There was a Chu Chow place. We always went to eat Chu Chow food at 3 o'clock in the morning in Happy Valley. I don't know why. It was just what you did. So I went to bed smelling of cold crab and a slightly vinegary goose.
That's mad.
Yeah, it was like that.
And what about the tunes going on here? You got a packed dance floor.
Well, that photo was taken by an amazing guy who's now a monk called Alain Yip. He used to have a wedding photo business called Modern Classic, and I said to him, "Come and take some photos," but he wanted to do it in the daytime because was a family man. But we were open 9 times a week. So in the afternoons, this is before Canton Disco did the noon disco. We did it at Disco Disco.
Mm-hmm.
So that was taken at 4 in the afternoon. So if you zoom in on the audience, there's nothing glamorous about that crowd. Everybody's from Hua Fu Chun or from God knows where. But that was like the young crowd. We used to call them Yao Ji Jai. So in the afternoons, it was all Yao Ji Jai. So everybody in that photo is a Yao Ji. So, but yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yao Ji Jai was like the slick back hair, teddy boy type teenager. That's what the Cantonese word for a sort of hipster. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Yao Ji Jai. The people who are less polite call them a gachat, but I would never do that.
Okay, we're about to see another kind of seminal moment in Hong Kong kind of record shop history now.
Uh-huh.
This is like we were catching up yesterday, and you mentioned that this is actually the 7-Eleven on Lan Kwai Fong, right?
Yeah, my mailing address for 4 years was number 3, Andrew Bull, number 3, Lan Kwai Fong.
That's mad.
Yeah. So that's where the 7-Eleven is now. It used to be the Colorado Meat Company's meat packing room, and it's next to the public toilets and the rubbish collection area. So it's definitely the ass of Lan Kwai Fong. But it was I rented it for 4,300, and it ran from 1981 to 84, something like that. But you can see this is a map of Lan Kwai Fong, and I figured out, together with my graphic designer, that if you did a Chinese calligraphy thing with the street map of Lan Kwai Fong, it makes the Chinese character Niu, which is Anao, which is that's like El Toro but in Chinese.
Right. Yeah. Happy cow.
Yeah. La vache qui rit. Yeah. So you can see what was there. Vinny and Salumi, that's where we had lunch every day. Fantastic Italian deli. And then 97, and then Cafe 97, which was on that corner. It was like a really dodgy place to go for breakfast. Then Music Boutique. Then there was Hair Tech, run by a guy called Julian Bales. And California had recently appeared on the scene there too.
And what was the sort of buying process like to get records into Hong Kong and that?
I used to order from Caroline Records, which is a wholesaler in England, and a couple of places in the States. And they would come, and I would let key people know, there's a shipment coming in. So all the DJs from Kowloon, they would be really waiting outside because there was no way to get stuff. You couldn't download music. So and the only people that cared about DJ mixes and sort of 12 inches were other DJs. So we made it into like DJ heaven. It inspired Roy Malling to be a record dealer, and he's still one. I think. Yeah.
What were the records that were
more
selling?
successful than me? Yeah.
Which were the records that were selling really well though? Like the ones that were kind of clearing the shelves.
Well, the Kowloon, because there was a lot of discos in Kowloon by then, and it was a big movement towards the Italo disco.
Right.
Like I like Chopin, like Gary, whoever. So there's Gazebo, yeah. So like Italo disco, sort of slightly electro-y stuff. It was getting towards the sort of Depeche Mode sort of songs like Living on Video, like Gary Lowe, I want you, want me, yeah. So yeah, Italo disco was huge. But that lady there, she had a record company called Crystal Recordings, and I used to do non-stop mixes for her, the Best Disco in Town series. So I think that was a photo we must have taken for, well, you can see the album had just come out. But I used to go to a studio in Bowen Road, and she would have these 24-track tapes, 2 units. So I had to beat mix 24-track tapes.
That's mad. It's like
you could adjust the speed,
right?
But it was an art, not a science. But yeah,
what's really cool about that photo is that like people always maybe feel that club culture is about going out, getting messed up, and but this is really like the a library for music and culture in itself, and it's on the same strip as disco and like all the sort of like known venues, you know, and it's so two are not separate; they're all tied to one.
I'm glad you joined the dots in that way.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Just
Next slide.
Just looking at that lineup of tunes, though, the Safety Dance,
Yeah,
China Girl.
they were all cover versions.
Were they?
Oh yeah, they were all cover versions because that's why you had that many diverse tracks. They were like a very, very good Filipino band or something had recorded these cover versions, so that I made non-stop mixes of these, so that you could put it on the car, you know.
Nice. Well,
Yes. Yes. Wow. I hope you've still got it. You know, we built to last.
I remember going to your shop and I'd be taken there by my older brothers and the coolest thing I'd seen in my life was you'd pick up a record, and in my case it was Wham Rap US Club Mix, and it had stamped on it promotional use only.
Yeah, I had a stamp like a bit under the counter. You know, the Fitzpatricks are coming in, sorted.
I'd be like, oh, we've got to get this promotional use only. Yeah, this is underground, man. This is Laotian funk right here, bro. Well, look, I think that picture there with Kraftwerk on the wall. I think right now we're going to take a little fair. Should we do a little fair use break here?
Okay.
Just to get into the mood of the time. These are the kind of tunes that were. Yeah, it's top up time.
May I offer you? Thank you so much, Dom Perignon.
Ad breaks.
Shameless plug.
Okay, guys, welcome back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
This is good fun, man.
so.
Sir.
So shit's gonna get real.
Yeah. Okay.
Get ready, guys, because now we're getting into the main course, and I think just the next slide will say it all, guys.
There we go.
This is kind of moment X, if I may say so.
Yeah.
Anton.
Well, that was the slide. Obviously, Alan Chan, our graphic design genius. I was playing with other people's money when I built Canton Disco, so I made sure I had the best. I had Kenneth Coe, who now lives in a castle in Scotland, and he wears a kilt all the time.
You were paying him too much.
Yeah, evidently. Yeah. Kenneth Coe, he was the guy who, for his 50th birthday, famously published a nude coffee table book of himself, which I have a copy. But he's a fabulous interior designer. And we also had Alan Chan, our graphic designer, who's still very active in Hong Kong. And this particular slide was, you know, those plastic viewfinders, like 3D viewers. You put a slide in and you get a 3D view. Anyway, the grand opening invitation for Canton Disco was a 3D viewfinder, and with sort of 3D effect with slide. That's one of the slides. So you got that in the post.
Arthur, take note. That's your next invitation.
It's crazy because we was chatting about this yesterday. How like promotion tactics have changed a little bit now. You know, now it's just like you post a flyers on Instagram, it gets to 1 million people. You know what I mean? But back then you had to really do hand to hand. Well, this is before hand to hand flyering. You're actually sending stuff by post, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I built up the mailing list. I hired the DJs a couple of months before we opened, and every one of them had a hairdresser friend or a friend who was a junior at a hairdresser's or used to hang out at the Shiseido Club in Bar City or whatever. You know, so they would use their own social networks to build the database. So we built this incredible database.
And so obviously this is 1985, 2021 now. I'm just wondering, are there still similar sort of structures in terms of having hosts, promoters? You still have people like, overseeing tables and doing invites the same way?
No, that culture in no way existed, and there was no celebrity DJ culture. I mean, we never had, Sasha at Canton or Simon Pang, on a headlining on Thursdays or something like that. So yeah,
I can get them for you.
Yeah, we had like a collective of like resident DJs, and the guys who that was composed of were people like Simon Choi, who won for Hong Kong the DMC, was at the Royal Albert Hall one year.
Right.
He used to come. He was 14 when I hired him. He used to come in school uniform in the afternoon.
No way, that's mad.
And now he's a big shot in Shenzhen. And Jimmy Lee, who was 15 when I hired him, now he's a billionaire. And lots of other people. Sam Leung was the head of the DJ department, who they were running a quite a sort of new romantic-y club in the New World Center called Shiseido.
Right.
And I recruited Sam from there, and he had a massive database. So that really helped our sort of young Hong Kong up-and-coming creds.
So, Canton was obviously one of the popular clubs that people wanted to get into, but were there sort of rival clubs? You said Shiseido. What were the other sort of venues saying at that point? Like,
Yeah, I mean, there was in Kowloon a place called Apollo 18, and there was a place called Hot Gossip. Hot Gossip was right next door to us in Harbour City, which was more of an Anglo culture place where it was English speaking was standard, whereas at Canton, I would say that probably Chinese speaking was more culturally the home base situation. But what was great was that I was able to infuse sort of actual what was going on in London and New York into actual Hong Kongness, which I think was what made it sort of a cultural social networking force rather than just sort of a disco for its own sake as a shopkeeping enterprise.
Right. And just more on the technical side of things, like how long were the DJs doing their shifts? Like, are they still doing 1 hour, 2 hour stretches, or were they doing all-nighters? Like,
yeah, I mean, I when I first opened, I had something like 8 full-time DJs,
right?
Because we opened 9 times a week. We opened 7 nights a week for at least 6 or 8 hours a night, and we're open Saturday and Sunday afternoon for the under 18 crowd between 2:30 and 6:30.
Right.
So you're going to have a roster allocation like crazy to block that in, and so people play 2 hours, or they'll take a stint on the lights. And people thought I was crazy. I had 7 full-time VJs at one point.
That's mad.
Because we used to. They would come to work during office hours, and I had a video editing suite in the club, and they would edit like a fast cut video stuff, which would then get played at night.
Right. And you said an under 18 club night that happened in the afternoon.
Yeah, a club afternoon. Yeah, because I mean, again, it was the way you met people was going to a club. But obviously, you couldn't have alcohol served to under 18s, and you couldn't have sort of old, perverted 30-year-old geezers hanging around when you've got a teenage disco going on. Right. It was a bit like the old school, going to the swimming pool. You'd book a slot. You'd go for the 4:30 to 6:30 to have your swim, and then you'd get out, and then you'd blow a whistle, then somebody else would get in and have a swim. It was a bit like that.
That's the fly right there, right? Guy having a swim.
Well, yeah, that was Alan Chan collected this sort of cigarette card of teaching you to swim, but also, there was underlying cultural reasons, like it was a bit androgynous, and the most of the generation that we targeted the club to, their parents may have swum from China, so it was all of this sort of Canton swim, got to Hong Kong, freedom, androgynous.
Canton Swim Club.
Yeah, well, that was the theme for our grand opening party, midnight swim. So,
amazing. And so tell us a bit about the slogan, time stops, space begins.
Well, I just wanted some nebulous sort of like, this is the moment, you guys,
kind of like past the Hawks. Right?
Yeah, means absolutely nothing. But it's been stolen quite a few times. It's.
You mentioned yesterday that you had an interesting strategy about how to promote the club. Maybe you could share a few thoughts about that.
For the opening, yeah. Well, I decided that we were not going to spend any money on paid advertising in Hong Kong, except I did take out an ad in City Magazine, which was like uber cool, trendy, probably still is. So I did take one ad in City Magazine, but what I did was I put our advertising budget, which was about £2,500, I took a half page in The Face.
In London, is it?
In London, which was the trendiest magazine in the world. So my strategy was drop that in The Face 2 months before we opened. So like every cool person in the Chinese diaspora around the world, whether you were studying at Central St. Martin's or being a barista in, San Francisco, you would say, or you would ask your friends in Hong Kong, or you'd ask each other, have you heard about this new club in Hong Kong that is in The Face?
That's crazy.
So like I made every cool person in the world, in the Chinese diaspora, say that to each other. And so having done that, then what that resulted in was awareness of the club, so even before we opened, it was the hottest club in Hong Kong. So by the time we opened, it was overheating, like it was white hot, and we had 11,000 people came to the grand opening party.
So then you guys timed the ad just before the students got on the plane to come back.
Yeah, something like that. It was guys like Gilbert and all these people.
Right.
They were overseas at school, whether they were underage or not. There was one thing they told their buddies they were definitely doing when they came to Hong Kong, was to come there.
Right. Okay, that's mad.
Shall we take a look inside?
Go right ahead.
Welcome to Blade Runner.
Yeah, that was the original design by Kenneth Coe. Rather austere. I wanted it quite a lot more funky, so I ripped that out within a year, and it would look completely different. I mean, I redid it 3 or 4 times a year, because when you're building a club, you have an idea for what it should be, but then when you're operating it, you know immediately that this needs to change right now.
Right. Yeah.
And so it evolved massively.
And how big was that venue then?
15,000 square feet, 2 floors, L-shaped, which is not ideal.
Right.
We just, I think it's now the Hermes shop. It was Joyce for some time.
And
it went through a period of being Sun Tun Lok Shark's Fin restaurant as well.
Wow. The floorboard also looks a bit like the Min Club floorboard right now as well.
Well, that's classic. That's classic Hong Kong parquet.
Yeah.
That's classic Hong Kong parquet.
Nothing's original, Vincent.
But the dance floor was a sprung Canadian maple,
Right.
which you can't see in that picture. But this was classic Hong Kong parquet, and then instead of having somebody cleaning the chewing gum off it like every day, we would sand it. We would close, we kick everybody out and close it once a month and sand the parquet so it clean, and then revarnish it, which was, you didn't want to be down there that afternoon.
That's crazy.
But because otherwise you had to have a full-time chewing gum guy.
That's right. And so that the logo right there, that's Harbour City, right? So that's the stairs going up to the shopping mall on the left.
Well, that's the entrance to the club, where the
Right,
big,
right.
yeah. So that's the corner on Canton Road. That exact structure is there now. I believe it's Hermes
Right. got
currently.
you. That's mad.
Okay, let's take a look at what happened. As soon as the club opened, it became the talk of the town. There was no shortage of celebrities here. If we put a photo of every celebrity that went to the club, we would be here until 10 p.m. at night. But this is a selection. You see on the left side, there was a TATLER story that's kind of compiled a few shots for some Hong Kong icons. You can see Zheng Gotwing there with you, and George Lam, the mustachioed, the permanently mustachioed Mr. George Lam.
I honestly hardly saw George there, but Leslie used to come all the time. And
Kylie
it's Kylie. We did. She, on her way to England to start her concert tour, she stopped in Hong Kong and did her first live performance ever at Canton Disco, according to her Wikipedia page. This was Rambo 3, the after party for the premiere. Oops, excuse me. Some event with Kai Bong and Brenda, the ultimate Hong Kong socialites. And in the bottom right-hand corner there is an interesting shot. That's Mr. Chow, the famous restaurateur, with his sister, who I was just talking to your father-in-law about.
Vivian Chow.
Vivian Chow, yeah. And then to her left is Tina Chow, R.I.P. She's the wife of Mr. Chow. And I don't know if anybody can guess who the person on the right-hand corner of that picture is. Yeah, that's Fanny Sher, yeah.
Fanny Sher.
That's what Fanny Sher looks like.
Wow.
Well, in 1987. Yeah. She's a very beautiful lady, then and now.
Well, she's coming up later because there's more shots. And is that a
An
vinyl album?
Yeah, we
produced?
used to release an album like once every year of by BMG. Those were original tracks, but it was not mixed. It was just like an album of the hits of the year. That was One Night in Canton 1.
And at this point, was the record store still in Central as well?
My store, I closed it about 84 because once I moved to Kowloon, there was no way I could keep going over there and running a record shop in Lang Kwai Fong.
The ferry was getting too long, weren't they?
Well, it was the MTR opened by then, but it was just two different worlds.
Got it. That's cool that.
So that's
vinyl, yeah.
Yes, but I mean, every record shop in Hong Kong used to sell vinyl in those days, not just me.
I'm just looking at that caption there on the piece on the bottom right, and it says Canton is almost a must-go entertainment spot.
Entertainment spot, yeah.
That's definitely not Tatler. We'd never allow that.
Almost a must-go.
I don't know where that came from. Not Tatler. Okay, next slide. Now things get
messy.
Yeah, things get to get messy.
I look wasted in every shot. Oh my God.
There you go.
High on the success and with Kashi flooding.
Eyeballs everywhere.
So talk us through.
Well, the picture. I mean, on the far right at the top, that's obviously Glenn Milstead, aka Divine, who I brought over to. He was on the top of the disco charts with some song which I can't remember the name of, but he performed live at the grand opening. That was taken backstage in the afternoon. I hadn't gone home to change yet, but he'd just done a dress rehearsal. That's obviously Anita Mui celebrating her birthday party at saxophone.
That's mad.
I wanted a back bar with. I challenged myself to come up with a bar name which means the same thing in English as it does in Chinese. So the Chinese word for saxophone is saxophone. So I patted myself on the back and printed a few business cards. So that was Anita Mui's birthday. And then in the same bar, but differently decorated, is that's John Farris of In Excess on the left and Michael Hutchins of In Excess on the right. That's me and Robert Palmer after Robert Palmer's concert in Hong Kong, drinking a lot of Cuervo Gold. And In Excess came to the show as audience members, as guests of Robert Palmer.
The gent in the middle is Run DMC.
Down here, that's Jason Mizell of Run DMC. He was the DJ guy. He was shot dead 2 years after that photo was taken.
Q flyer.
Yeah. This was the flyer for that night. Yeah.
So
you were at that one. Yeah. So
that's the original flyer. I have it framed. I was actually the opening DJ of that, and the funniest thing happened. So
Yeah. Eamon's here.
Eamon showed
How
up.
are you, Eamon? No, not at all. No. Yeah.
All I remember is starting my set, my warm-up set, and I mean I was 17 at the time and didn't know anything, and then within about 20 minutes I get a tap on my back, and I turn around and it's this guy one of the crew, and he just pushes me aside and says to me, "You give me some records." Like, it didn't matter what records I would give him, he was gonna cut the shit out of them and DJ his ass off. And I was just like, yeah. So I was just handing him records the whole night. And I only just found out yesterday that you think it was Russell Simmons.
Yeah, because Russell, the founder of Def Jam Recordings, with Rick Rubin, obviously, he was the tour manager on that tour. And he was the only other guy apart from the band members that was there.
So I was kicked off the decks by Russell Simmons. I can live with that.
And another anecdote to the Run DMC thing. We got a call from the China Fleet Club. The USS Enterprise was in Hong Kong Harbor, and they asked if Run DMC could go and do an impromptu show for all the sailors on the ship. And I asked Russell. He said, "Let's go." So we went and we did a live PA with Run DMC on the deck of the USS Enterprise in the middle of Hong Kong Harbor to 5,000 ratings in their boiler suits. It was incredible, and there's not a single photo or reference to that anywhere on the internet.
That's crazy.
That's a sign of the times, right?
Yeah,
because today that with smartphones.
Yeah.
I mean, back in those days.
Oh my God! I mean, I don't even know whether the U.S. military would have allowed us to take photographs. 'Cause people were funny about picture taking, like they wouldn't have wanted a picture of like 6,000, boiler suit boys raving on the boat. It might have been politically incorrect.
Right. Yeah.
But I think actually like clubbing and nightlife has changed a lot since everyone's got phones now. But back in the day, no one had a phone.
Yeah.
No one had a camera phone, and so you didn't care what you did. You just go out, and there would be no concern.
It would be unusual to be papped. And we had measures in place to make sure that nobody with a professional camera got anywhere near the VIP areas. Because, I mean, those were the heyday of like Ming Pao Weekly and all of these, monetized paparazzi publications. So if Cecil Chow was carousing a new starlet, that would be on the front page of, so you need to protect against that. Otherwise, people just wouldn't come.
That's wild.
On the bottom left, that's backstage after the Erasure concert. That's Vince from Yazoo and Depeche Mode in the white T-shirt, and his partner, who you didn't want to be the person delivering McDonald's to his room, I can tell you. But because they were in Hong Kong for a week because they rented Canton Disco to rehearse the world tour, so they used it as a rehearsal space. So that was my face after them being there for a week.
Who are the cool cats on the bottom right?
Oh, those guys. Well, that was because taking a leaf out of the Tatler's sort of social pages, I used to have a social photographer at Canton Disco on Saturday and Sunday afternoon, and then there was a couple of publications which we got, Clearasil or somebody to sponsor the centerfold, and you'd have these Tatler style social pics. So the kids would dress to kill on weekends. They come down like this in the hope that their picture would be picked to be in this magazine. And I have all the original photos, which are posted in a gallery on the Canton Disco Facebook page called Children of the Noon. And it's a holy grail for all of those people because those pictures were lost in a shoebox. I did the world a favor and put those hundreds of photos.
What year is this then?
Oh, that would be 85 to 91.
Because it's funny how like just looking at these photos, like how certain haircuts and styles sort of just come back like 20, 30 years later.
There's no way that those photographs were any later than, let's say, 1990.
Yeah. I would have thought that guy on the right is Chromeo, and that's Tom from MySpace. And I don't know, that could have been someone else, yeah. But it looks pretty contemporary, though, I reckon, to some extent.
Yeah, but those people will be the parents of people who are your customers now.
Right.
That's just a reality.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
For sure.
Canton closed in 91. And what was the kind of reasons behind that? What was the?
Well, I mean, we typically we signed a 3-year plus the 3-year lease, which is total 6 years, and then we actually an ad hoc 1-year extension. But Hong Kong was blowing up in terms of property, Kowloon Wharf was under new management. There's a lot of reno going on at Harbour City to turn it into an upscale mall. We were paying $170,000 a month. They wanted to put it to $720,000. And I'd already been doing it for 7 years, 9 times a week for 7 years.
Wow.
The photo of me on the bottom left, I look like that like most of the time. So after doing a nightclub 9 times a week for 7 years, by that time we'd been doing so many live events in the club. I'd already started, doing shows at the Hong Kong Coliseum, Koshan Theatre, and other venues around town. So I became I took 10 years off and became a sort of a concert promoter.
Sure. And what, just to kind of get the relationship between sort of club life, promoters, club owners, and landlords, like what was the relationship between Harbour City and Canton? Like, did it bring it good press or bad press, or was it always up and down? Because I think that's like, I think landlords sort of run Hong Kong, don't they?
Well, I mean, I think that certainly in the early days they were proud of us. I mean, there's plenty of pictures of executives from the landlord company who would bring VIPs to the club and proudly bring them. So say there's lots of celebrities come here. When you're running a club, there's a period of honeymoon where the glass is generally seen to be half full by most people. But if it goes a bit out of fashion or it's been there for a few too many years, it's the first thing that people think, remake, redo, reset. Shouldn't we like change the tenant mix quick? It's a miracle that a disco with that much shenanigans going on right in the public eye could sit on that prominent corner for 7 years unmolested by that. Because I mean, that would never happen in Pacific Place or anything remotely like that.
Was there other sort of like shopping malls that were doing sort of these like club experiences? Or was Harbour City sort of like the one that sort of took it?
I just think that Harbour City had a hard time sort of establishing itself. It was before the heyday of queues of Chinese people outside the Celine shop. That hadn't happened. That came 30 years later. It was still kind of a backwater. People went to the Ocean Terminal. That was a trendy thing. It was near the Star Ferry, but nobody really went down Canton Road that far. It was like, why would you go down there? Right. So it took them a while to establish it. And I think that's why, people willing to rent 15,000 square foot tenancies, like that, not that far,
Yeah.
So that's how it was.
You mentioned you kind of transitioned to more like concert promotion and all of that, and I think one of the most famous gigs that you organized was the handover party in 1997. So this slide here shows some kind of fun moments from that event.
He's saying that he thinks that the Public Enemy show that I did was more seminal than the Unity Party. But we'll cover that in the Q&A. Yeah. But this is I realized that nobody was doing anything to mark the handover on a civilian basis other than, Prince Charles in the rain. So I was in Beijing doing a show and I found that poster on the right with Deng Xiaoping on it. So the poster inspired me to build an event. I butchered that poster. I think nobody's going to challenge an event with a picture of Deng Xiaoping on the poster.
How'd you get him on the lineup?
Hey?
How'd you get him on the lineup?
Well, I mean, I got Boy George, Paul Oakenfold, Pete Tong. Nice. Pete Tong broadcast the whole show live on his Essential Mix on Radio 1. Cool. I mean, it was a big event. We sold 11,000 tickets at $680, I think the price was. Or $580. I can't.
$580.
Is it $580? Yeah, $580. Yeah. It was $680 on the door. That's what I charged Alan Zeman's daughter anyway.
So you got Janva there, and so the second line beneath, in case you can't see it, so you got Grace Jones, Boy George, Pete Tong, Paul Oakenfold. Then the second line down, you got Janva, so Janva Tam's on there, Joe Lai and Christian.
Oh, local boys, mate. Local boys.
And you got some alternative stage going on here.
Yeah, Adrian Sherwood, who's the most brilliant, the owner of On You Sound, he was the audio engineer for the whole project, made us sound brilliant.
Gene, who one of the big indie guys at the time, and Steve Mason grew up in Hong Kong.
Yeah, that's right. So that somehow we cobbled together a bit of an indie lineup. As you can see, the indie lineup's not my specialty. They'd never bring me in to curate Clockenflap.
Well, I can concur, and the proof of that is that you let my band, me and Eamon, play there on the Vitamin trip.
Yeah. I was like,
you had no clue what was going on.
I was like, I'm so tone deaf to anything indie that I just say, yeah, whatever. As long as we're not paying you, just turn up over there. So my focus is on the top line.
What I remember from that gig is number one is meeting Robert Plant from Led Zepp backstage, who was there with his son, and that was kind of crazy because it was what's Robert Plant from Led Zepp doing here?
He was at the party. I just as a customer, he bought a ticket.
Yeah,
that was bizarre.
And I remember Grace Jones and the singer of Gene getting into a fight, and Grace Jones is, I think, yelling at Boy George at the top. I don't know if she is. But,
no, that's Boy George. That's.
But she got Martin Rossiter and Grace Jones got into a fight because he wanted to use the bathroom, so he goes to the gents, which are the kind of the ablution blocks, I think, backstage, and he was stopped from going in the gents. He's like, what are you always stopping me? He goes, Grace Jones is in the bathroom in the ladies, and if she was in the ladies, she would block the ladies and the men's, and you couldn't get into the whole ablution block.
Oh, I see.
And Martin didn't like that at all, and it ended up into a bit of a...
I haven't heard that story. That's a new one on me.
A little tussle. What was the fees back then for someone like Paul Oakenfold?
He always believes that I paid Boy George more than him, but it's not true.
Really?
That's all I'm saying. Because I'm still friends with. I'm on WhatsApp with Paul. I'm not going to open that one back up.
So I think you sort of segued into your career, and I think the interesting thing about you, Andrew, is that you sort of became a bit of a statesman here. You hit the apex.
Well, I was
statesman-like status.
I became an impresario in Hong Kong, which meant that people who wanted to sell shows to Hong Kong, they're limited people to sell them to. So every morning, my fax machine or my telex machine would have messages from all kinds of people saying, well, consider the 3 tenors for next New Year's Eve, things like that. And this was Peter Ustinov, because I had met Harvey Goldsmith a couple of years before at the Human Rights Now concert in Wembley, which I was going to bring to Hong Kong, but couldn't get permission to do it at the football stadium. But anyway, Harvey sent me a fax, and he said, Peter Ustinov, he loves going to Asia every Christmas and New Year. Can you do his one-man show? So I used to do Peter Ustinov's one-man theatrical show at the Lyric Theatre every 2 years, sold out 4 nights. And it was like a little bit different from doing a rave at Bar City, the type of crowd you get. As you can see from my suit, I was expecting a higher tone of clientele. So the governor himself was there.
Indeed.
Yeah. So Mr. Z in the hoose. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking about Chris Patton.
Yeah. Well, that's it. That was backstage at the Lyric Theatre.
How many of these guys were at the Unity rave?
Sorry?
How many of these guys were at the Unity rave?
Nil.
Chris Patton, for sure. He looks like he's got a bit of a gun in him.
No. I don't.
But of course, the interesting thing, Andrew, is that you sort of went back to your roots after all of that. Now you're the artist. You don't have to deal with artists. You've been booking artists for pretty much your whole time, and now you become an artist in your own right as DJ El Toro.
Yeah.
And there you are at. Would that be Wonderfruit?
That's Wonderfruit a couple of years ago. Yeah. Should have seen Swami that night. Yeah. Thank you for the T-shirt. I've been complaining to Douglas that he's discontinued the Chungking Mansions Deluxe Hotel T-shirt line from the GOD shops. Dude, whenever I wear that shirt, everyone says, "Where'd you get that shirt, man? That's epic, man." So you obviously mix with a different crowd. But,
Is it a good time to bring up the Canton disco T-shirt that you made, Douglas?
Well, no. We never actually copyrighted it because the company, like, yeah.
Okay, you're off the hook.
the company that owned the rights to it was called Taipan Club Limited, and it was like wound up after we closed the club. So so it's kind of in the public domain. But there's been some things which you would treat as a compliment. Some guy opened a Canton hair salon in Mongkok. We did not consider that a compliment.
Isn't that one of the?
But if God opens, he gives a tribute T-shirt, with the exactly correct metallic hot stamp lettering, which I used to have on my business card. That's quite impressive.
Well, someone did open a Canton disco in Shanghai, didn't they?
Right. Yeah.
Our friends at Black Sheep. They.
Yes, that was we treat that ultimately as a compliment as well, because they, I worked out a deal with them. I play there like one Thursday a month. I get 2 nights in a suite and dinner for 10, no questions asked on the wine bill. So that's that's right. Yeah, that's right. So Swami's familiar there, but I mean it's impressive to me that the Black Sheep restaurants, the boss of Studio 54, Ian Schrager, and the Marriott Corporation would get their heads together and open a shrine to Andrew Bull on the Bund in Shanghai with their own money. So that's what happened.
Indeed, why not?
Yeah.
Why not? That's legit. And of course, on the left, you got a lovely family pic there. That's
Sally and Yolanda.
Your wife Sally, and your daughter Yolanda. Yeah.
She's 19 this year. That's an old photo.
And did she take after Dad? Is she a muso?
No, but she's creative. She's been accepted to Glasgow, the Macintosh School, to study product design and industrial design. She's always been good with her design. She's a great artist, and she's going into the creative zone. And she's great on hospitality, because I host the Key Club in Shanghai every Friday as DJ El Toro, but since I'm down here, she's hosting it.
Wow, nice.
So, and everybody in Shanghai is likely to say, "Is Yolanda here?" Not, "Is Andrew Bull here?" Nobody says that anymore.
Wow.
So yeah.
One of the great things about Canton is that it just lives on year after year, and this is a spread that TATLER did for the 30th anniversary. Was it the 30th or 35th?
Yeah, we opened on
30th.
the 30th of March 1985.
Yes, this is
So
2015, yeah.
in 2015, we thought we would mark the 30th anniversary of the grand opening by throwing a kind of Canton party for those that were there. As you can see, that's what people look like now.
Including Fanny there on the left.
That's what Fanny looks like now, yeah. And there is obviously Pansy and her sister.
Josie, yeah, and Daisy.
Pansy booked, she was one of the first to book a table for 10 people. She paid for their tickets, and they had a fantastic time. So all of these people passed through the doors of Canton. So the idea, it's quite good if the club didn't actually last for 30 years. The idea was more preserved. It's like a pop star dying while he's still beautiful. There's nothing worse than a nightclub that shouldn't still be alive. Yeah.
So any plans for 2025? For the
Well, we were going to do a Canton 35 last year. It's now 36 years. So we've got to get, nobody wants to attend a super spreading event at the moment. So we're going to wait until people can fly. 'Cause people fly in from around the world. Lots of people live outside of Hong Kong now, but they would come back to meet all their friends for one more time.
So what venue is this at then?
That was at Looper, which was some out-of-business restaurant in Queens Road.
Right.
I just transformed it into Canton Disco for the night with a few neon signs, and but it was absolutely incredible night.
Is there a lot like DJs from back in the day?
Yeah, all the original DJs like Jimmy the
peers.
Face and Simon Choi, they were playing that night.
Amazing.
It's all on YouTube. You
Right,
should
right.
dig deep.
Yeah. There you go.
So that's the thing. I mean, Canton was just, I guess, What did you describe it as? A concept that
Well,
not a club.
it was a club that became an idea,
Yeah.
rather than an idea that became a club. So it was like the idea of that community, and the fact that it was a social network. Like, you didn't need to make a date with your friends; you just went there, and you knew that they'd be there. It was the precursor of, a WhatsApp group that you'd have today. But in order to meet people, you had to go somewhere, and from a tribal perspective, you chose very carefully where it was that you went. And if you were in that tribe, whoosh, every night.
Okay, well, this is probably one of my favorite shots of you, Andrew. I was taken on the night itself. I think
I was determined to have my money's worth.
I think we are going to open up the floor to some questions. I'm sure you guys have all got things that you want to chime in with. Let us know. We've got a microphone, I think, that's going to be passed around if anyone wants to say anything. In the meantime, I will do a quick fire with you and Arthur. What's your ending tune of your set? What's your favorite ending tune? What do you end with?
Well, you mean now or then?
Now.
Well, these days now, I usually play Adrian Sherwood's. It's called Bahia something. It's a reggae track.
Okay. What about then?
Then I would normally play Mellow Blow Barabbas.
Oh, that's on the playlist, actually.
Yeah.
Arthur, what do you do? How do you close your set?
It's like you said, reggae. Probably something ska related, like the Specials, or like Message to You, Rudy, or something like that, where it just slows everything down, but it's sort of just a sing along as well. Yeah.
Okay. You're on the decks, and the music cuts. What do you do, Arthur? What's your face?
Get on the mic. Get on the mic. Get on the mic. Start beatboxing.
Or analyze why it's cut, first of all, and solve the problem as quickly as possible. I'm not sure why you do anything else.
Okay. Last quick fire question before I throw it to the audience. Some a-hole leads over to you and he shouts in your ear, "Play some real music." What do you do?
Luckily, that's never happened to me.
Arthur. Stroke your chin. That's a good one.
Yeah.
And then uppercut.
Uppercut.
Swift uppercut. Okay, guys, who's got the first question? Who have we got? Mr. Simon
Pang Washford.
So back in the early days when you were doing disco and Canton, can you remember? There's always a certain time in the night when it goes from warm up to you switching up and really setting the floor alight. What were some of your favourite tunes, say from the early days?
Don't tell him, because he's going to be playing him next week, by the way.
Well, no, I mean, there's always a moment when you want to trigger the realization amongst the waiters and the customers that it's going to happen now, and this is it. So you play whatever is appropriate. I mean, the skill of being a DJ is to always be able to think 10 songs ahead, but you never actually necessarily play those 10 songs. So you've got like a sort of machine gun barrel of songs that you could play. It's going like this in your head. But I mean, you'd pick a song at the moment, like something signature. Certainly, there would be in the 70s when the Hustle came out. That would be my opening track. Say, okay, you motherfuckers, this is get busy time. Yes. So then you'd put the Hustle on, Van McCoy, and then the dance floor would be full. Or a few years before that, Kung Fu Fighting.
Of course.
Everybody's like, oh, he's playing that. Let's go. So there's certain things which make humans move towards the dance floor.
I've got one more. Is that okay?
Go right ahead.
So you mentioned earlier because I mean, when I started promoting club nights and stuff like that, it was always like through physical flyers. You were saying it was through the hairdressers and stuff like that. They were like the graphic designers and the I don't know, influences of the day. Was there any? Because I guess all the makeup of the club, it was all the parties was the you've got all the high society, but you also need the oi polloi. Was there any other sort of professionals that would be always needed to make the parties spark?
Well, Hong Kong side, you had to deal with the bankers and all that. But in Kowloon, it was thankfully never really an issue. But I mean, the way, I mean, flyers and giving out flyers to people in the street really came along with the sort of Peter Upton and Charat era of sort of raving. And you know, there'd be some geezer from Lama giving you a flyer on Wyndham Street. But that was not what happened.
No.
We had mailing lists. I mean, we put stamps on postcards and sent it to people. So, like, you know, if you were a junior at a hair salon and you received a mailing, it wasn't considered junk mail. You think, I've been invited to something extremely damn real. That changed your life.
So people would actually fill out their information on entering the club sometimes, so you'd keep that.
Yeah, and we put a lot of effort, because if you ever remember trying to keep a database updated, like in real time, you know, when you're using like typewriters with those little balls on it, and you have to type out the labels one by one. You know, we did all that. There was a phone in the office, like 2 lines, and if it was busy, it was busy. That was the way it was done. But to keep a mailing list alive, and you had 4,000 or 5,000 names, by the time you've even written them down, 20% have moved or have got a new job because you had their work address. So it was the computer does it all now, but in those days it had to be done personally, which was actually better because you knew every single person. Like so-and-so, he's not at Le Salon anymore. He's gone to Il Copo. So, you know, if you send it there, they'll just tear it up because they don't want him to have it. So you had to keep track of all of that.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Would you send it on a weekly or monthly basis?
Well, I mean, we would have...
5,000 postings.
We would have big signature events like the anniversary party of the club once a year. We tried not to send too much stuff because that's another thing which devalues it. If you receive 10 flyers a month, you know, we just judiciously. An event was always a big event. The whole club gets behind it. So it was not like, you know, 10 flyers a week for Thursday ladies' night. I mean, it was a lot of. When we would send out a flyer for a particular event, we might mention, oh, by the way, don't forget, Thursdays, as always, couples night, you know, something like that. You know.
How'd you promote the Unity rave then? Like that must have been like hand-to-hand firing, or?
Well, that was I mostly promoted by that poster being stuck all around Central.
Right.
And Shim Sa Tsui. Because in those days, I don't know what the legality of putting posters is up now, but in those days we had some kind of Haksewui guys who would go and put the posters up.
They're still around.
Oh, they okay? It's all good. Some things never change, but that because that poster itself was so striking, but it wasn't selling that well. Just on the basis of the poster, so right. I panicked like a week before, as I'd sold 3,000 tickets and I needed to sell 10,000 tickets. Right. So I changed the artwork from the Deng Xiaoping artwork to that one with the more details of the lineup.
Right.
And focus on Grace Jones.
Right.
And then I changed the artwork again and just put it like Grace Jones is coming. And then everybody else. And then suddenly we sold out. Yeah.
Deng Xiaoping got cut.
Yeah.
Grace Jones took it.
Yeah.
Right.
He just wasn't selling.
That's fake advertising. I came for Deng Xiaoping. He's not about, man. You know what I mean? I got lied to. How much of the sort of Canton sort of socialite crowd was sort of mingling into the Unity? I guess this is before Kai-Tak, is the high-tech days.
Yeah.
Old Airport?
That was like it was a very generational thing. We'd started doing the rave thing while I was still at Canton. Me and Sean's brother Liam did something called Depot in a shop house in Man and Earth, which was open. It was called Man and Earth, which was in Wester. We did that for 10 weeks. It was the first real sort of illegal rave, no liquor license, you know, very shady. just the way we like it.
But very popular.
Yeah.
In its 10 weeks, it was the spot in town. I mean, that was
Oh,
where
yeah, it
In
was-
Excess would show up, and
It was, we
Mike
kept-
Hutchins met Kylie.
That's
on the
right.
dance
Yeah.
floor.
We kept it going for 10 Saturdays, but on the 10th Saturday, the police came in the front and the triads came in the back at exactly the same moment. So for the Western District, there's a nasty bunch down there. They didn't like the fact that we were not getting any money from us. So we just said that's it, and we never went back there. It was a guy called Sandy Hui, one of the founders of Esprit. Remember Sandy? Sandy Hui. He was one of the founders of Muji. He brought Muji to Hong Kong, and he was very big into previously owned, previously loved jeans, and he had this massive, incredible place with a spare floor. So we used to do that in Western District. That was amazing.
And how many of the promoters that were doing the sort of Canton parties were also putting on raves at like the market, or was it completely separate apart from you dabbling in both worlds?
Yeah, the rave thing came about with an influx of a sort of English construction workers whose job it was to build the new airport and that bridge.
Simon Birch.
That crowd,
Yeah,
yeah. It was
yeah.
like, who are these people? You know, that was something new for Hong Kong,
Right.
and it was like, okay, I get it. You know, so that was not really. I mean, that was not really us because we were two of Hong Kong. These guys came in and they would already been, raving in England, so they brought that. That's who they were.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, I get it.
But
So-
I've also
so-
heard that like a lot of the promoters that sort of did really well in the sort of rave scene, doing all the big parties there. When I think it was like 2001 or 2, when the parties getting shut down by cops for like violence and whatnot. A lot of them, the promoters made a lot of money from the raves, ended up opening clubs like Joe Lai from Drop and whatnot, and that came from sort of promoting big functions, didn't it?
Yeah, Joel and Simon,
Right.
or DJ Blackjack, as he liked to call himself.
Blackjack, yeah.
They did very well bringing in. They took the Regal Hotel ballroom and did a few famous parties with Sasha and things like that. And from what I hear, they made a few bucks. I mean, people were willing in those days to pay $450 in advance and $550 on the door, and you'd
That's
get
a lot of money back then, though.
yeah. I mean, Hong Kong's that kind of place. I mean, when mobile phones came out, they cost $23,000 to buy, and the bill would be like $12,000 a month, and people paid that as though it was perfectly normal. It's ridiculous, but it's how it was.
Speaking of Depot, so do you know Signal 8 Security? We all know Signal 8 Security. Well, that company was born from Depot because the founder of Signal 8, the Scottish chap, I'm blanking on his, Bruce McLaren. He was an ex-firefighter from Scotland, and he showed up, and we were like, okay, you be the security, and that was his first gig, and from that he built Signal 8, and we all know Signal 8, but it's funny, but that came from.
Well,
Depot.
those guys used to do all the security for our concerts as well.
Yeah.
So we were growing up together,
Yeah.
doing all that good stuff.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's been such a fun afternoon with these two great chaps here. Andrew Bull, as I said,
Andrew Ball.
legendary
Thank you, guys.
impresario, Arthur Bray, Yeti crew. You guys
Thank you so much.
really made a great fun afternoon for all of us. I want to thank everyone for coming today. I hope you enjoyed the chat. I hope you all enjoyed the first volume of Past the Orcs.